Previously on the Dan the Man Show, Dan talked about that Family Guy knockoff again for the 17th time. Kinda seems like that's all he's talking about nowadays. After spending 40 minutes discussing the ramifications of a golden turd on this fictional world, he... Wait a second. Is that right? A golden turd? Yeah, it does say golden turd. What? Really? It's got to the point where he's talking about crap? For 40 minutes? Who has 40 minutes worth of material to talk about fecal matter? I don't know, but I wouldn't want to be friends with anyone who does. Then again, what do I know? It seemed to have done him pretty well numbers-wise, so maybe he's just giving the people what they want? Which just so happens to be a man with a lisp talking about poop. Am I out of touch? Like, what? Maybe I need to reevaluate, like, my priorities or something. Anyways, here's Dan talking about that show again. A golden turd? Like, I don't get it.
Out of all the characters in American Dad, only one goes through a multi-season arc that not only reestablishes the character's more dynamic personality traits, but also officially upgrades them from a secondary character to a primary one. But it's also a character who, through the process, had to undergo many tragedies just to get to that point. And even once getting there, could arguably have taken a toll for the worse in regards to character writing all around. That character is none other than Jeff Fischer. But who exactly is Jeff Fischer? Well, Oh, actually, you know what? Hold on one sec. Whew, glad I took care of that. It was getting a little too cramped in here with the letterboxing. Anyways, I wanted to take the time in today's video to look over the character of Jeff Fischer, his humble beginnings, the moment where his story changed, his epic tale, and where he stands nowadays. And hopefully, through the entire process, I'm able to convince you why he is the most tragic character on the show. And before you say anything about how Klaus or Stan have much more tragically depressing backstories, while those two definitely are viable contenders, a lot of what we see happen to Jeff takes place throughout the series, and we see exactly what unfolds. Whereas with Klaus and Stan, a lot of their traumatic experiences come from events that happen before the show's narrative is set, like Stan's upbringing and Klaus's unfortunate transformation. Not to say those aren't important and don't play a role in the storyline of where the characters are now, I just think that Jeff's story is more compelling due to the fact that we're seeing it unfold in real time. If you want to see me talk more about Klaus or Stan or any of the other characters on this show, let me know in the comments below. But for now, let's begin at the very beginning of Jeff's story. Which just so happens to be the very beginning of the show. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about given how he wasn't even like a secondary character at the time the show first aired, but Jeff's first appearance is actually in the pilot for the show. Granted, he's there for like not even 20 seconds, but the fact that he even was there to begin with is pretty cool. This first appearance is fine, all things considered, but it doesn't really give us a good idea of who Jeff is as a character, or who he'll become, so I'll just give you all a quick rundown. Jeff Fischer, aptly named after the actor who plays him, Jeff Fischer, who basically is just like the character appearance-wise, like they nailed it to a T, is the lovable stoner on-again, off-again love interest of Hayley Smith. As the show goes on into its earlier seasons, we see a lot more insight as to the relationship of Jeff and Hayley, as well as the actual character of Jeff. In the very beginning, all of Jeff's screen time is focused entirely around his relationship with Hayley, but that's still very important to set up. Through these episodes, we get a deeper look into why these two work so well together, and equally important, how the rest of the Smith family views Jeff, especially Stan, who very early on was a foil to Haley's left-wing liberal ideas. So you can kind of guess that Stan does not like Jeff in the slightest, with him citing his laid-back attitude as the driving force behind his distaste.
There's nothing wrong with Jeff.
Too bad. I forbid you to see him.
What? Stan, I'm not sure we should—
Francine, wait in the car.
What?
And in a way, his hatred of Jeff kind of rubs off on the other members of the Smith family as well.
I'm gonna shoot him in the throat.
Stan, wait! Wanna watch?
Despite this being established very early on, like I'm talking in the 3rd episode of the show, it's also established that Stan is capable of respecting Jeff when push comes to shove. Haley has to take up a stripping job to make ends meet, and when Stan confronts Jeff about this, he's just as against the idea as Stan is, albeit for probably different reasons. I mean, it's basically the same.
I've dated 3 strippers and 2 of them turned up dead. And the cops always go to the boyfriend with the van. That's profiling, man, and that's wrong.
We actually get into the meat of the relationship pretty early on too, with the show's 8th episode, Bullocks to Stan. In it, we see the beginning of the off-again portion of the on-again, off-again relationship, as Haley breaks up with Jeff over agreeing with everything she does and not really giving her any sort of challenge.
You just always agree with me.
You're right, I so do that. But I can change.
No, you can't.
You're right. Let's get married.
This, in turn, leads Haley to start dating Stan's boss, Avery Bullock, which I know that she's 18, so legally it's all fine and dandy or whatever, but given the large age gap, it's still very strange that this is the route they went down.
You slept with my daughter?
Well, to be perfectly honest, neither of us did very much sleeping.
Despite Stan's hatred for Jeff, he doesn't like Haley sleeping with Bullock more, so he trains Jeff to be more assertive and win Haley back.
Are you familiar with a TV show called Fear Factor?
Yeah?
Well, today you're going on a long car trip with Joe Rogan.
This backfires, unfortunately, when Haley breaks up with Bullock on live TV, and Bullock orders Stan to kill Jeff. They eventually track him down to a diner, where Jeff tries to prove to be more assertive by taking on Bullock.
I don't need you to fight my battles. I'm assertive now. Listen, dude.
This episode also highlights another attribute of Jeff that sticks with him almost the entire way through. He's just such a nice guy, to the point where it's kind of like a fault. Like, he's so happy that he thinks he gets to go hunting with his girlfriend's father and boss, he completely ignores the signs of trouble. And when your reason for getting dumped is that you're too agreeable with your partner, I mean, that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's nowhere near the worst reason to break up with someone. While the other characters' personalities change and become more exaggerated as the years go on, it's cool that, for the most part, Jeff's nice attitude has been a constant. There's a lot more on-again, off-again relationship shenanigans within the first 3 seasons, but when it comes to episodes looking primarily into Jeff's character, we finally get that with the episode Joint Custody, which is where the beginning of Jeff's tragic story starts to take shape.
Why can't Jeff live with his family?
He hasn't spoken to his dad in years, and his mom ran away before he was born.
How could she do that?
When Roger finds out that Jeff is a wanted man in Florida, Stan tries to trick Jeff so that he can take him in and get rid of him forever. We learn from the car ride that Jeff hasn't spoken to his father in years, since he's ashamed of what happened in Florida and doesn't want his dad to find out, thinking the world of him. I think this was a great direction to take the episode in, since we've seen that Stan has acted the same way towards his father. After finding out Stan's plan, Jeff escapes to his dad's house, where Stan corners him, only asking to spend one last night with his dad before he gets turned in. It's here where we start to learn that while Jeff thinks so much of his dad, the feeling is not mutual.
I'm so proud of my son. In fact, this is the wall where I keep all his awards. What? There's nothing there!
To make matters worse, it turns out that the pot stash that Jeff got caught with belonged to his dad, and he stowed it on Jeff without him knowing to take to Florida. And I know, it still somehow gets even worse than this. He plans on bringing Jeff down to Florida to turn him in for the reward. And Jeff is completely blind to the whole thing, thinking his dad is going to clear his name.
You're wrong about my dad. He cares more about me than anything.
There's your criminal. Just give me the money. That's all I care about. Money. Not Jeff. Money.
Thankfully, with Stan's planning, he's able to catch Jeff's dad's confession and free Jeff from the bounty. We then get this really touching scene with Stan and Jeff bonding over the fact that they both have lousy fathers, and that you can't really choose your father, but you can choose your father figure. It's actually really sweet, and it does a lot to build up not only Stan and Jeff's relationship, but also show us more of Jeff's potential as a multifaceted character. As far as Jeff-related stuff goes from here, however, it's a bit quiet for a while. He still appears in a few episodes here and there, but for the most part, it's in regards to his on-again, off-again relationship with Haley, where they either break up or get back together, or they kinda just have him for a joke.
1, 2...
His next major appearance comes from the show's 100th episode, aptly named 100 AD, and it's a doozy of an episode. In it, after countless breakups and makeups, Jeff finally decides to propose to Haley, who agrees, and the two of them elope, knowing that Stan and Francine would never approve of their marriage. Unfortunately, things do not go well for the almost newlywed couple, as Jeff didn't really have anything planned for the two of them once they ran away, and they then have to hide out after Stan offers a reward to whoever stops their marriage. When Jeff sees how visibly upset Haley is, he uncharacteristically tries to make a deal with Stan and Francine to get the reward money if he agrees not to marry Haley, to which they agree and meet up at an undisclosed location to finish the deal.
We were right about you all along.
I'm sorry, Mr. S. Your daughter and I have just been fighting a lot, and I'm not sure she's awesome.
However, despite all of this, it turns out that Jeff was playing the long game, as he and Haley ran away after taking the reward money. Throughout the show, there are bouts of genius from the character of Jeff, but this is definitely the biggest power play that he's pulled. And despite being duped and losing his daughter and the money, Stan is actually impressed with how Jeff was able to dupe him. The episode ends with the newlywed couple driving away, with the reward money in hand. This is another great example to showcase how Jeff is much more of a complex character than the stoner idiot living out of his van that he was created to be. After this episode, it kinda seems like the status quo has changed, at least for a little bit. Despite making cameos, both Haley and Jeff are subsequently missing from the next few episodes. They don't make a permanent return until 5 episodes later, where Stan welcomes Jeff into his household to feel like a bigger man. I know that doesn't really make much sense, but they show up in like the last 2 minutes of the episode, and in the context of the episode itself, thematically it does make some sense, so you'll probably hear more about it in my big ranking video coming in 20XX. So just to recap where we are right now, Jeff and Haley are married, and Jeff now lives with Haley in her room. This isn't something that's forgotten about in the next episode either. This is a new thing going forward that they're sticking with. As such, he starts appearing in many more episodes, but just like before they got married, a lot of these are boiled down to him just being there, or him just being the butt of the joke. And I want to clarify, those aren't necessarily bad things, especially in a comedic animated sitcom show, but for the sake of this video, there's nothing else to talk about for a little while. There are a few standouts, like when he saves Stan's life from Santa's attack, which I kind of did a video on that. You can watch it by clicking on that little icon in the top right corner. Or when Stan tries to prove to Jeff that he can live on minimum wage outside of the house, but for the most part, it's basically the same old, same old. Everything changes, however, when we get to the episode, Naked to the Limit, One Last Time. There's one factor we haven't really discussed yet when it comes to Jeff's relationship with not only Haley, but also the Smith family, and that is Roger. Throughout the whole show up until this point, Jeff never really knows that Roger is an alien. However, with him becoming a more prominent character in the show, it's harder to justify continuing this charade, especially with him living in the house now. This episode dives into that dilemma, with Roger being fed up with having to wear clothing around the house due to Jeff now living there. In Stan's defense for this reasoning, Jeff has gone to show that he is unable to keep a secret, so it's not like no thought was put into this. Roger, however, in an attempt to try to find a way around things, pretends to be Jeff's imaginary friend that only he can see, so that he can be naked around Jeff. And as an added bonus, in order to keep the secret intact, the rest of the family has to pretend that they can't see or hear him while he bothers them.
Ow! You okay, Mrs. S?
Oh, yeah. I just had my, period. It was pretty big.
Unfortunately, this charade does not last long, and Jeff finally figures out that Roger is an alien. Before Stan has a chance to kill either Roger or Jeff, Roger says that he can return to his home planet so that no one is in danger.
And just for fun.
Damn it, I could have stayed!
The rest of the episode takes a bit more of a somber turn, with it turning into more of a bit of a farewell for Roger, as we see some highlights of his time on the show. This all culminates with the family sending him off on a transport ship, never to be seen again, but not before giving Jeff one last hug.
Jeff! No! Make them turn around!
No, wait, stop, come back.
Needless to say, I was completely flabbergasted by the episode's ending. To be completely honest, I never expected Roger to actually leave the show. At that point in time, he had become way too integral to the core of what the show was about for him to just leave. Plus, Seth was voicing him alongside Stan, so it didn't really make sense for the character to leave from a behind-the-scenes standpoint either. However, I fully expected them to just pull a Deus Ex Machina and have a way for Roger to stay on the show. And in a way, they kind of did, but at the cost of causing another character to depart from the main cast. Like I said, I was speechless when I first watched this episode. But after a bit of reflection, I sort of realized that American Dad has done these sort of WTF endings before, where everything reverts back to normal in the next episode. So I decided to wait for the next episode to see how they go back to normal. After almost a month, they finally aired the next new episode, and it was a sequel to the Tearjerker episode, which in and of itself is a very fun side story, but having to wait that long, followed by another 2 weeks before we got any definitive answer as to how they would handle this, let me tell you, that was torture. Finally, we got our answer in the episode Spelling Bee My Baby, albeit in the most American Dad way possible. In the B plot of this episode, Stan and Roger need a line judge for their badminton game, and with Steve and Francine preoccupied, and Klaus...
I'll do it.
Yeah, all that leaves is Haley. However, she refuses to help as she's going through the 5 stages of grief, trying to cope with Jeff's loss. The rest of the B plot revolves around Stan and Roger trying to rush her through each stage of grief so that she can be their line judge. So there you have it. It's basically confirmed that what happened in the previous episode actually did have ramifications going forward. Jeff, a character who at this point in time had begun to define himself as a member of the Smith family and join the ranks as a more important secondary character, was just up and gone. And if what Roger says is anything to go by, we may never actually see him again. Is the fate of Jeff Fischer all but decided, however? Luckily, Jeff's character wasn't completely written off, as only 6 episodes after his departure, we got the episode Lost in Space, which not only confirmed that Jeff was still alive, but also showcased exactly what happened after he was abducted. This is easily one of my favorite episodes of the entire show, and I plan to go into more detail as to why in that ranking video down the line, but for now, I want to focus on how this episode helps develop Jeff's character in an amazing way. So after getting abducted, Jeff is forced to work on the alien ship at a shawarma shop with his co-worker Sinbad. Not even someone impersonating Sinbad, that's just Sinbad, I love it. Jeff tries to plead with the Emperor to let him go, but the Emperor ignores his cries. He later learns from Sinbad that the only way off the ship is to prove that his abduction has taken him away from his true love, i.e. Haley. However, everyone who has tried to prove that has failed, and as a result, their, tools for lovemaking, we'll just call them that, have been removed. Jeff truly believes that he and Haley had a true love and accepts the Emperor's test, leading to one of the best scenes of the show to date. Through a musical number by Wax Fang and a creature known as the Majestic, we are shown the memories of Jeff and Haley's relationship, but from what we're shown, their love was anything but true. In fact, we're shown only Jeff being a selfish jerk to Haley, meaning that he's failed the test and will be subjected to the penalty the next day. Now, we know what was shown isn't the relationship between Jeff and Haley that we know, but Jeff truly does believe that everything that he thought he knew about their relationship was wrong, and that he really was nothing but a selfish jerk. This leads to, what I think at least, is one of the best moments that defines Jeff and Haley's relationship. He has the chance to get it on with the shapeshifter the last night before the surgery, and he almost goes through with it when she shapeshifts to look exactly like Haley. But as Jeff puts it,
I mean, come on, I'm exactly like her.
You look like her, but you're not her. I didn't learn to read for you, or stop eating my scabs for you, or start to pee sitting down so I wouldn't wake you up.
this one scene does a greater job encapsulating how Jeff has matured from a flaky, carefree stoner to someone who would change themselves for the one that they truly love. I mean, he's still a carefree stoner, but so is she, so I mean, there really wasn't a lot to change there, but there was enough. In fact, there was more than enough for Jeff to question why only the bad memories were shown. So he goes down to the Majestic to confront it, only for it to reveal that he was coaxed by the Emperor to only show bad memories, all because he went through a nasty breakup, and you'll never guess who the culprit was.
Roger! Oh my god, okay, wow. Can we please be grown-ups about this? Because I can't.
After making the news public to incite a riot, Jeff and Sinbad attempt to escape the ship, but unfortunately, Sinbad is unable to make it before succumbing to his wounds. This leaves Jeff, drifting alone through space, the hope of seeing Haley being the only thing to provide happiness when he realizes he has no idea how to get home, and thus ends with Jeff traveling aimlessly through space. And then the post-credit scene, Sinbad comes back as like a Force ghost, so I guess he's okay too. Man, this episode did such an amazing job at showcasing how much Jeff has matured, not only as an individual, but also in regards to how he views his relationship with Haley. But whereas this episode is about how his love is a driving force that will see him succeed at all costs, the next episode in the saga, The Longest Distance Relationship, we'll see how his love will cause him to make the most difficult choice in his life. So far, we've been focused primarily on Jeff when discussing these episodes, which makes sense given that he's the central topic of this video. However, I think it's also important to look over and discuss how Haley is dealing with the situation at hand. For the most part, since his abduction up until this point, we haven't seen much of Haley coping with his loss. However, we finally get some insight as to how this has been affecting her in this episode. At this point, it's been a year since Jeff has been abducted, and she is not handling it well at all, boarding herself up in her own room and claiming that she'll never get over him. After an ill-fated attempt to get her out lands her in the hospital, she meets millionaire Matt Davis, and the two of them hit it off almost instantly, impressing the rest of the family with his generous gift.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much!
Did someone just drop a house on me?
Haley seems to be out of her funk, until Steve reveals that in a totally unrelated and absolutely in no way to hook up with Trucker Girl's side plot, he's able to contact Jeff using a CB radio. With this new info, Haley falls right back into her old habits, refusing to leave her room or go hang out with millionaire Matt Davis in case Jeff tries to contact her again. It's not until Francine plants the seed of doubt in her mind that Jeff will never be able to find his way back that she faces the dilemma of choosing between Matt and Jeff, especially when Matt has planned a dream adventure for the two of them and needs an answer. Haley reluctantly chooses Matt and goes to break the news to Jeff, only for him to reveal that he's found a wormhole that should take him back to Earth in no time. He asks if Haley promises if she'll wait for him, to which she reluctantly agrees and rips up the plane tickets. The episode then shifts focus from Haley to Jeff and Sinbad as they travel through the wormhole and are back on Earth. But unfortunately, not in no time.
Haley?
Jeff! I knew you'd come. Oh, it's been 60 years, but you're finally home.
That would explain the floating cars.
Meet George Jetson.
We then get a highlight of how everyone's lives have changed thanks to Haley waiting for Jeff instead of moving on. Francine has had too much reconstructive surgery, Steve and Snot are married due to a failed pact, Roger has 2 adopted black sons after killing their mother, and Stan transferred his mind into a gorilla's in order to prepare for the upcoming ape takeover. After Stan spills the beans about Matt Davis to Jeff in a bout of anger, Jeff questions Haley about him, only to be so overcome with guilt that she succumbs to a heart attack. In the hospital, we once again reunite with Matt Davis, where we learn that he's since taken up a job as a janitor at the hospital, since that's the first place he and Haley met. Realizing how much he's messed up everyone's lives by promising Haley to wait, Jeff makes the most difficult decision for him to date. He flies back through the wormhole, sending him back in time but also stranding him in deep space, and contacts Haley one last time.
I thought we found a way home, but I was wrong. And it's not fair to ask you to wait for me.
Jeff, what are you saying?
Move on, babe.
This is easily one of my favorite scenes of the show. We've already seen just how much Jeff loves Haley, to the point where his love for her allowed him to escape his alien enslavement. However, he loves her so much that even if it means that they can never be together again, he'd rather her be happy with someone else than keep hoping for his return. And thanks to this sacrifice, Haley and Matt are able to live happily ever after.
You gotta hide me. I just married a black chick with 2 kids and then I killed her.
Okay, Haley, the jet is parked out front. You ready to go to Fiji?
No witnesses!
From here on, the timeline gets a little strange. For all intents and purposes, this was originally the series finale of the show, with Fox having cancelled it, only planning to air some burn-off episodes later that fall. However, as many of you know, the show was almost immediately saved from cancellation thanks to TBS, who picked up the show for a new season and has been airing new episodes of the show since. My opinions of the TBS era of the show are better saved for another day, but when this announcement came out, my first thought was, are they going to keep going to finish up the Jeff in Space arc, or will it just end? I was hoping it would continue, but looking back now, I also think that the longest distance relationship is a good ending for not only the arc, but also the show as a whole. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we eventually did finish the story, and I'm very glad the show is still airing new episodes, but that final speech from Jeff, man, it just rings so true. Sometimes you just gotta move on with your life, even if it means saying goodbye to something you love. It's a poignant message, but it's an important one, and I think they handled it pretty well. Either way, that's not the timeline we live in, and the storyline did reach its natural conclusion, but we have a bit to go before we get there. So let's move on to the next episode. I dare you to take a guess as to what happens here. That's right, Reginald's back. Oh, mother... That's right, Jeff's back on Earth, and he's finally reunited with Haley, and it feels so good. Except, something's not quite right. Jeff's acting strange, no longer wanting to smoke weed or listen to his favorite music, and instead spend time with Stan, and the two of them actually hit it off. Not only that, but where's Sinbad? Did something happen to Sinbad in space? At first, Haley thinks that Jeff has changed so much in space and is no longer interested in her. However, Roger is able to keep one step ahead and reveals to Haley that the person who they think is Jeff is actually a shape-shifting alien from a species called the Collectors, who have come to infiltrate the Smith family and collect them, as well as their possessions. Wait a second. Once they figure this out, Roger and Haley go back to the mothership to find and rescue Jeff, and they happen upon the ghost of Sinbad.
You were with Jeff? Where is he?
Oh, you are in luck. He's right there.
Whoops.
You're in luck may have been a bad choice of words.
Yeah?
Meanwhile, the imposter, who I will now be referring to as Minion Jeff for obvious reasons, has become too engrossed with the human culture to the point where he betrays his other collectors, and with Stan's help, both of them follow suit closely behind Haley and Roger and save them from meeting the same fate that Jeff did. Minion Jeff even makes peace with the other collectors by offering them Earth's greatest treasure.
Frozen yogurt.
All's well that ends well. I kind of forgot about him though, he's not okay. Before Haley can even process Jeff's loss, Minion Jeff, as an act of kindness towards those who showed him kindness, sacrifices himself by putting Jeff's brain in his body, meaning that the Jeff that we kinda know and love is back, much to Haley's excitement and Stan's chagrin. And as an added bonus to whatever the fuck is going on, at this point I've lost track, apparently the ship is equipped with memory erasing devices that will erase all non-alien memories as to what happened aboard the ship, so only Roger knows of what really went down, and this new Jeff. Also, we never get to see Sinbad again, so I guess fuck Sinbad. Honestly, the saga of Jeff could end here, and I'd be pretty content. I mean, sure, it's not technically the same Jeff that we started with, but it is Jeff's brain inside of a body that looks like Jeff that doesn't even know that he's an alien. I mean, weirder things have happened in the show, but for all intents and purposes, this is basically the next best thing to the OG Jeff. Believe it or not though, we're not at the end of the story yet. We're close, but we still have some stuff left to cover. In the season 14 episode Bahama Mama, Jeff and Haley decide that they want to try and have a baby. The episode revolves around Stan being unable to cope with the idea, since that means that he'll be a grandpa, and he thinks he's too young to be a grandpa. And also Roger murders a lifeguard because Baywatch, but that's not really important to the discussion. No, we're just here to talk about the end credits, where Roger, who was the only one on the mothership whose memory was not wiped, reveals to Stan that Jeff is an alien, and if they have a kid, it would be a half-human, half-alien hybrid.
That's right, Dadders. Jeff has superpowers. Tune in next week and see if we deal with that. And maybe Reginald will come back.
That dude in the back is so happy after hearing his name. I really wish I could be happy too. The very next episode, Roger's Baby, acts as a pseudo part 2 to this pseudo reveal, with everyone else in the family finding out that Jeff is actually an alien with Jeff's brain, which also explains why Jeff and Haley are unable to have a baby. The only way for them to have one is for Jeff to be human again. And the only way for that to happen is for Roger to consume Jeff's brain so that he can get pregnant with Jeff and rebirth him as a human male adult. I'm starting to realize why my therapist hasn't called me back yet. After much resistance, Roger agrees to help rebirth Jeff.
Now, how do we go about getting Jeff's brain?
The rest of the episode kind of revolves around Haley looking over a pregnant Roger, with him leaving her after he feels like she's not being supportive. They eventually reconvene, with them coming to terms that they both have to support each other in these trying times. Soon after, Roger's water breaks, I guess is the way you would put that, and they rush to the sketchy doctor, where a new human Jeff is born.
Hey, buddy.
And thus, Jeff is reborn as a human again. And after all the turmoil that Haley went through with Roger, and the fact that trying to have a baby with a newborn isn't exactly kosher, they decide to halt their efforts to have a baby for the time being, thus ending the epic arc of Jeff Fischer. So we just went through a lot, so let's do a quick recap before we wrap up this whole shebang. So not too long after Jeff and Haley got married and Jeff moved in, he found out that Roger was an alien. And through average Roger trickery, was abducted by Roger's home people, where he was forced to work as a slave in a flying mall with Sinbad. He was able to escape the flying mall, but at the cost of Sinbad's life. But that's okay because now Sinbad is a ghost Jedi who has become more powerful than anyone could possibly imagine. Eventually, they get in contact with Haley, who starts dating millionaire Matt McMuscle. Jeff and the ghost of Sinbad find a wormhole that takes them directly to Earth, but unfortunately they're thrown forward in time when everyone is older and sadder, and Jeff isn't into octogenarians, so he goes back through the wormhole never to be seen again. Also, millionaire Matt McMuscles dies, rip king. Also, I lied because holy shit, Jeff's back! Except he's not back. It's instead Minion Jeff, as the real Jeff has been collected and dissected. The minion formerly known as Jeff decides to put actual Jeff's brain in his alien body, and also they all get amnesia and we never see Ghost of Sinbad again, rip king. Things seem fine for a bit until Jeff and Haley try to have a baby, and then they realize they can't while Jeff has an alien body, so Roger eats Jeff's brain and births a new human Jeff. So throughout this whole ordeal, we've had OG human Jeff, who was killed and dissected and replaced by Minion Jeff, who sacrificed himself and put OG human Jeff's brain into his minion body, which created a hybrid OG Minion Jeff, which then had his brain eaten by Roger to create a new human Jeff. Meanwhile, on Family Guy, Brian gets cancelled on Twitter.
I watch tons of black porn.
Needless to say, this whole entire story arc is completely unnecessary for a show like American Dad. Honestly, they could have just written it out completely, and I don't think it would have affected how anyone views the current overall view of the show. However, its inclusion in the show makes it one of the most unique adult animated sitcoms to date, and it's incredibly impressive in what it's able to pull off. Not only is it able to tell a complete story that spans over numerous seasons, but it was even able to continue and conclude its story after the show's initial cancellation and switch to another network, meaning that the story and the character of Jeff were very important to the people behind the show, and honestly, I'm very glad that they did not just kill him off in space. But with a title like The Tragedy of Jeff Fischer, it's interesting to see this sort of happy ending, right? Like, yeah, what happened to Jeff was pretty traumatic, and basically he's not even the same Jeff that we once knew before, and even without this whole storyline, Jeff's origins were pretty screwed up, but in the end, he still ended up with the woman and family that he loved, right? I mean, that's true, but in a way, I do think that there is an underlying tragedy behind this happy ending, and it's a twofer that can be seen as a little heavy-handed, so buckle in for this one. On the one hand, while Jeff did manage to overcome these impossible odds and make it back to the people that he loved, just because he's back, that's not to say what happened can just be easily ignored. Despite the many deaths and reincarnations of Jeff, you have to remember that his original brain stayed intact the whole time, so everything that he witnessed and dealt with is still in that noggin of this new Jeff. Even then, he has still witnessed the loss of people that he grew to love and care about, and that's not something you could just easily forget. But I'd say the more impactful tragedy behind Jeff isn't even directly related to the character of Jeff himself, but more so the missed potential of his character after the story ended. I praise American Dad's writers for telling this extremely ambitious story with a character that still isn't even given a spotlight in the theme song, despite everything that's happened to him. I mean, really, Joyce Kinney has more screen time in the Family Guy intro than Jeff Fischer has in the American Dad intro. And when was the last time Joyce Kinney was even remotely relevant to the show?
Here with more details on the snowstorm is Asian correspondent Trisha Nakahoma.
That's wrong. That's wrong. You're not doing good so far.
But I digress. Even though they did a fantastic job to tell a full, complete story with Jeff, the way they just nonchalantly go back to the status quo after he returns is a bit disappointing to say the least. Now, I don't really blame them for this. I mean, the show is an animated sitcom first and foremost, and the status quo is a sitcom's best friend. But because of that, Jeff doesn't really have anything to do in the show anymore, despite his increased appearance. Even when there are plots revolved around him, it never takes into account how much he's matured and grown through his space travels, and always sort of falls back into this area of Jeff feeling like he's viewed as incompetent by the family and wife. And while those episodes are sometimes entertaining, it's still a bit upsetting that they kind of refuse to look back on this little space escapade with Jeff and allow him to grow from it. It kind of just feels like the Jeff that learned and grew from these experiences is still lost in space, looking for a way to come back. You know, I always thought that American Dad was one of those shows that was just never going to end, sort of like The Simpsons or Family Guy. But every day I feel like that reassurance is thinning more and more. With the episode Echoes from last season apparently being a pseudo-series finale for the show, since they didn't know if they were picked up for another season at the time, and with Jeff's plotline in that episode being forced to help Roger earn back his reputation in the whip crack music industry, I don't know if we'll truly ever get a good follow-up ending for Jeff Fischer. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Reginald should have a spin-off. Motherfucker!